And the reason why this matters is because this impacts how people make their decisions, how people are impacted by the opinions of their other family members, and how it matters to them. Like if the grandparents say something, or the parents say something, or other members of the family, then how it impacts. We will discuss that later. Now, another thing about India is, are you still with me? Are you still following all the diversity in India, everything which is combining us, yet dividing us, again combining us? There's one thing, another which divides the people beyond everything else I mentioned above. It's how much money you have in your bank account. It's the rich people, the middle class, and the really poor people. How many of you have seen Slumdog Millionaire? Awesome. So you have seen basically the description of the lowest type of people. India is a parallel reality. Some people are living a life which you cannot even imagine, which even I as an Indian cannot imagine. If I go out and I see them, I'm really like, you can just not imagine the kind of lives they are living. And then there's a huge middle class, people who go to office every day, people who are in government jobs, people who are in Fortune 500 companies who are making an income of like 500 euros a month, and then coming home trying to like just live a life. That's a huge middle class in India and a huge, huge market. And then there are the super rich people. People who buy all the good cars, people who live in awesome houses, people who run their businesses, people who have tons and tons of money in the bank account. So that's the really rich people. Now, when you start targeting your marketing to them, you have to consider all these factors, all the factors like region, all the factors like language, all the factors like what caste the person comes from, what sort of culture you are targeting, where that person lives in the country, and what subcategory are you targeting in it. Are you going towards the middle class? Are you going towards a really rich class? Are you going towards a really poor class? Don't forget they are a big market too. We have 1.2 billion people. If you have a market of like 400 million people, and you are still making like €1 from each other person in a year, you're still making 400 million euros. That's another huge market, which companies like Hindustan Lever, which is a division of Unilever and one of the biggest companies in India, does. They try to sell a lot of their products to this market, and they're making a huge profit out of it. And then you have really big brands. Every brand you can imagine, like think of any high-profile brand, Prada, think of Gucci, think of Hugo Boss. They are all much more expensive than you pay in Europe. Like if I go to a Hugo Boss store here and I buy a new collection, so my jacket here costed me 300 euros, but in India the same thing would cost 450 euros because of the import taxes. But still these people, the really rich class, they don't care about it. They have excessive amount of money. But how to reach them is what we will discuss later. Now the big question is how it matters for the foreign companies. What it matters for a company from Europe, what it matters for a company from US. I'll tell another really sensitive thing, but it's another to do with the caste. If you're a white person, you're supposed to be high profile in India. If you're a black person, you are associated more with the low caste. So if you're a company, if you are a foreigner from, let's say Europe, or let's say from US, all of a sudden you're a white person who goes to India. Suddenly everybody would be looking at you with the kind of respect, which is like surprising for most people. Oh, just because I'm white, I am being respected more than other people, than even other Indians. And all of a sudden, but if you are more colored, then all of a sudden people start looking at you less differently. So companies, the brands which present their image as a company from US, as a company from Europe, or a company from European Union, then you have a huge advantage over local companies, over companies from places nobody has ever heard of. So that's another thing which needs to be pointed in your marketing, that you are a company which is from Europe or US or from Australia or from a place where most Indians want to be associated with. That's another obsession of Indians, to get out of the country as soon as possible. Now, more facts about India. India is a volume market. You have to have a completely different mindset about numbers. There you don't talk about numbers of like 50 million, sorry, 5 million. You talk about like 100 million, 200 million. You reach a market in hundreds of millions in a huge, bigger volume. And that also means that some of the things are very price competitive. You are working on very thin margins, but you're talking about a volume which will make you a huge amount of money. So, for example, let's just take an example of soap. One of the most popular soaps in India costs about like 6 cents, 6 euro cents. But the thing is, they sell about 1 billion pieces a year. Like each person has to use that thing again and again. And the kind of brand they have built, people go out and buy that from just like 6 or 7 cents, and they're using it again and again. So all of a sudden, when you take the net volume, you are adding billions of dollars to your company account by just going to the volume market. And the second thing about India is it's full of bureaucracy and corruption. We need to pay petty corruption for everything. If a policeman stops you, you have to pay a bribe of 1 or 2 euros, otherwise you're not going anywhere. If you have to get custom clearance then, you have to pay a bribe of like 10 euros. That's part of life, and every foreign company has to deal with it. If you're a foreign company who wants to get a license for starting to be a media agency in India, you will have to go and deal with the Ministry of Communication and Ministry of Broadcasting, and you will, as a foreign media company, need to get a license. Be prepared to pay a bribe for it. And if you are a travel person, you will have to pay something to the person trying to, so that he can speed up your file, so that your application will be processed really quickly. But the good part about that is there are agents everywhere. You go to an expert broker, he or she manages everything for you. He just tells you the complete final price. Okay, if you probably go to me and you ask me like, how much would it cost me to get a company and to get this license? I would account for everything, like how much I pay in bribes, how much I do everything, and give you the final price. So that's how it works. And if you try to go the really clean way in India, like, okay, I'll do everything. I'll go and deal with all the government offices. I'll go and do everything myself. Forget it. You better be ready to hire a local Indian person, a local Indian expert in that industry. Don't go to a general person. Don't come to me and tell me how, like, please fix this thing for me. Ask me, I want to get into travel business. I want to get into media business. Who should I talk to? Who is the person who has his brother or his sister or somebody who is in the position of power, who knows who can give that thing? So you need to find that person. That's another secret about India. Then Indians place a really high value on trust and personal relationships. Like, you cannot be distant. You have to build a trust with people. And Indians are very open. In general, if you meet an Indian person and if you go to India, you would be surprised that most of them will say, okay, if you're coming to India, stay at my home, despite not knowing you that well. Because that's the mindset of Indian people. We are very open about trusting people, and by default, most people there trust people. Like, if all of a sudden at night my car gets broken down anywhere in a village, people will just offer me to stay at my home, even though I've never met them. And if you go to their home, they will never let you go out without eating something. Because that's just part of the culture and mindset. It's very different for a person who just comes there for the first time. But the more and more you get involved into it, you'll start understanding that it's like an open thing. And then there's like a really important part about the small retailers in India. People don't trust big departmental stores. We don't go and buy from big departmental stores. We buy from individual people, and we buy from small retailers, really small shops. If you are a web hosting company or if you're a design company, I would not go and buy from a brand. I would rather buy from the person who I know, who I trust, and who I deal with all the time. So if you are a foreign company and if you want to work in India, you will have to start building up relationships with people. You will have to start getting on a customer relationship profile one by one. You will have to hire people who go out, build friendships with people, do stuff. So that's another very important aspect about India is the small retailers and individual agents. Now comes my favorite part. Yesterday, McKinsey Consulting produced a report which said India could become the first truly mobile digital society. And the reason for this statement of why they are so bullish that India could be really leading the way when it comes to mobile are the numbers. The numbers of mobile penetration in India. Right now, India has 752 million mobile phone subscribers. These are the number of people who have a cell phone with them, compared to 81 million people with broadband. And the fact about Indian cell phones is that they are extremely cheap, much cheaper than Lithuania, surprisingly. Like, I would say about 1/5 the price of what I pay here is what I pay in India. And it's an excellent access to people. If you need to reach to people in India, if you need to reach on a mass scale, if you need to reach out to a lot of people, then you have to have mobile strategy. That's something very, very important. If you are trying to reach to people, if you want to build a relationship with them, if you want to build some sort of trust with them, if you want to constantly communicate, you don't send them emails, you send them SMS text messages. You build everything around mobile strategy. And when you have 752 million subscribers, you can imagine that there are some really serious players. The biggest players in India right now are Airtel, Vodafone, which is a UK company. They purchased a company called Hutchinson. Hutchinson was a Singapore-based company, which was another partnership between Indian people and them. And another company, Aircel, Tata, I'm sure everybody heard of them, Docomo, the Japanese company, and Reliance. So these are the big players in India. And Virgin is another major player, but they don't have their own infrastructure. They are a company which came to India, signed up a deal with a company called Tata Indicom, and said, okay, we are going to distribute your stuff. We are going to buy minutes from you in wholesale, but we are going to sell them under our own brand. We have a brand called Virgin. So we go to people, do our own thing, but it's your infrastructure. We rent the infrastructure and take everything from you. So they are just focusing on brand, but they are still a major player. Now, India is a GSM country. We are not big on CDMA. I'm not sure how many of you here know about the technologies behind mobile phone, but if you use a SIM card like this, and this here is a GSM SIM card. It depends on the kind of way your voices are being forwarded on the phone. Well, it's something to do with modulation. But India is mostly GSM, and it's mostly about cheap phones. Very many people there don't have expensive phones. They all carry those old $30 phones with them from Nokia or from Samsung. And